Hello and welcome to the Transfers podcast powered by FootballTransfers.com, where we bring you news, insight and analysis on that most important, the least important things, football. Welcome to another Transfers podcast extra, and this time it's a special with me, Ronan Murphy, and I'm joined this week by Bence Bocsak, a Hungarian journalist, a Liverpool fanatic, a published author. I recommend his book, Rise of the Underdog, very highly. So, Bence, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm looking forward to this episode and talking about some of my favourite and not so favourite Liverpool transfers.
Yeah, it probably makes a change for you being the one answering the questions, because usually you are hosting the Anfield Watch analysis, insight, interviews, all those, which you can also find on YouTube. I highly recommend any Liverpool fans who've come across this to tune into those too. So this time we're obviously counting down the 5 best and 5 worst Liverpool transfers of the 21st century. So who better to answer those or pick his top 5 and worst 5 than Bence. So we'll get cracking with the bad this time. We had good first on the Barcelona episode, so we'll go for the bad this time. So yeah, let's get those out of the way, and then we can move on to some positive things and some positivity for the Liverpool fans as they chase another Premier League title this season. So number 5, who have you gone for, Ben?
Yeah, so we're starting with the worst, which means we will go with Ben Davies. Probably a player who, I don't know if many Liverpool fans will even remember, but definitely non-supporting Liverpool fans who are listening to this will be asking themselves, who is this player? Because they will have never heard of him. And I think he's just a bit of an enigma at Liverpool, really. He was signed in a January transfer window when Liverpool were very desperate to bring in centre-backs. He was brought in at the same time as Ozan Kabak from the Bundesliga. And at the time, Ben Davies was, I would say, a relatively average centre-back for Preston in the Championship. Liverpool were desperate to bring in defenders. So he was available. I think they signed him for £1.1 million. Ended up staying, I think, for just over a year. And never played. Never. I think maybe he got in the squad a couple of times, but he was even struggling to make the squad. And instead, Liverpool had Nat Phillips and Reece Williams playing games over him, who were fairly average centre-backs from the academy.
Yeah, I think 0 games is the statistic that really kind of stands out there. And surprisingly, they made a profit on him. They sold him to Rangers and made some money from it in 2022. With $3 million they got back from him. So I don't really know what they saw in him from his Liverpool stint that made Rangers pay that money. But obviously the Preston form previously, or loan spells, was the difference there. But number 4 in your list is a player that everybody loves to hate and some people hate to love.
Yeah, maybe it's a little low on my list, considering he was brought in for almost a record transfer now with all the add-ons that he's since accumulated onto his initial 64 million figure. Darwin Núñez really sold us a dream, I think, in 2022 when he first arrived in pre-season. I think he scored 4 goals against RB Leipzig, wasn't it? Scored in the Community Shield against Manchester City. Haaland was pretty absent in that game, and obviously that was the same summer that Erling Haaland arrived at Manchester City. And up until that point, we were starting to think, maybe Liverpool got the better end of the deal. And then red card in one of his first games in the Premier League. And suddenly you start to notice that maybe mentally he wasn't necessarily ready for this challenge. And very quickly, you also start to notice that Erling Haaland is a different beast. So Liverpool definitely didn't get the better end of the deal. He's in his 3rd season now at Liverpool, and it still looks like everyone is saying, like, give it time. in the end, Darwin will come good. But a lot of people, I think, are now starting to realise he will never become good. And I think, considering how exciting his arrival was, how highly he was rated, he's been a massive disappointment.
Yeah, he always looks to have all the raw tools, and I think that's what people say about him. That's why he could come good, or just wait till he gets a bit of confidence. And you saw those statistics at Benteke before Liverpool bought him, and that's why they bought him. You saw him play against Liverpool. Probably his best game involving Liverpool was against Liverpool, a bit like Coutinho and Barcelona, famously. But yeah, he's averaging less than 1 goal every 4 games. And I know people like to point out in the early seasons that he had a goals per minute or goal involvements per minute, but there's so many games where he hasn't contributed anything, and you kind of wonder how long more he has left. And Arne Slot doesn't seem to trust him at the moment, maybe as he looks to other players forward. He obviously gives a different dimension up front because he's that big man, and you saw it in the first leg against PSG in the Champions League that he was able to kind of make a difference in that game where Liverpool at times were struggling to keep the ball up the field. But if there's a one-on-one situation, you can't just trust him. And I think that could be said of number 3 on your list too. You just couldn't trust him at times in front of goal, despite what he had done at previous clubs.
Yeah, it's Christian Benteke, and I think we're going to be talking about a lot of big number 9s for Liverpool on this list. They seem to be the ones who don't tend to do very well. Benteke, I think, was seen as kind of like a good signing at the time. I think he was around one of the top goal scorers in the Premier League when he arrived. All the data and the numbers seemed to suggest he was going to be a good player. Brendan Rodgers, I think, seemed to like him, or he was the one who really insisted on bringing him in. I think the data team had sort of other plans, but then Rodgers, pretty much as soon as he brought him in, left the club, and Jurgen Klopp came in, and Klopp just didn't seem to rate Benteke. And in all fairness to him, he only spent really just around a season at Liverpool, and in that season, when he did play and actually start games or even come off the bench, he had some nice moments, particularly that overhead kick against Manchester United. So this is why he's number 3 on my list, because I think there were other players who were a little bit worse, but at the time he was still one of Liverpool's biggest transfers in their history. And the fact that he, towards the end of the season, when Jurgen Klopp came in, he wasn't even playing games, wasn't starting any matches really, I think just goes to show how disappointing he was.
Yeah, there's some players obviously that do well at other clubs and then they come to Anfield and it just doesn't work out for him. And he had a similar goal scoring record, 1 goal kind of every 4 games. So he had won no trophies in his stint at Liverpool, but they were able to offload him kind of within a year for nearly as much as they paid for him. They paid £32.5 million. They sold him for an initial £27 million to Crystal Palace. So it wasn't the worst of the worst deals. And I'm glad you talked about all these number 9s that there's plenty of on your worst list. There's plenty of number 9s that have failed to score. But I'm glad Robbie Keane didn't make the list, because he's a notable mention, because obviously Liverpool were his boyhood club and he always dreamed of playing there. But number 2
is... He seems to have a lot of boyhood clubs.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I think he's the coaching at one of them in your home country at the moment, but we'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, I think with Keane, he obviously he was brought in as a sort of backup for Fernando Torres, and in all fairness to him, when he did play, he was actually all right. He scored some big goals and some pretty impressive goals as well, like the one against Arsenal at the Emirates. I think that will go down as sort of one of the best goals Liverpool scored in that stadium. So for all those factors and the fact that his time at Liverpool was very brief and very short, he doesn't quite make the list. But maybe if we were doing the top 10, he would get in there.
I'm only here for the Robbie Keane propaganda, to be honest. And yeah, I'll try and slip in some Queeveen Kelleher propaganda and maybe Trent Conor-Doherty as we go along. Yeah, the Irish at Liverpool. But number 2, is Andy Carroll. that's who you've gone for, and it's no surprise. We had the poor man's Andy Carroll, as I think the chant goes. It's less PG than that for Darwin Núñez at the moment. But number 2 is the real Andy Carroll.
Yeah, and as you can see, not really a surprise. I don't think Andy Carroll ever wanted to sign for Liverpool, but he was Liverpool's record transfer at the time. Liverpool were basically scrambling and very frantically trying to replace Fernando Torres. They got a 50 million offer for him, and they realised that is too good to turn down. I think you could tell Torres was getting towards the end of his prime. He wasn't really scoring as prolifically as he had done before. So Liverpool were ready to sell, and they decided the best option was Andy Carroll, who, in fairness to him, that season he had done really well at Newcastle. I think the previous year in the Championship he was scoring quite a few goals, so you could see a lot of potential in him, young English striker. But then he got to Liverpool, and I think from all the previous interviews that he has done post his Liverpool career, he said he didn't really want to be there. He didn't want to leave. I think he was always refused to go on the helicopter to Liverpool. There's another question why he had to take a helicopter from Newcastle to Liverpool. It's not exactly that far away, but these were like the prime sort of transfer deadline years when, I don't know, helicopters were in fashion for some reason.
Have you seen the price of British rail tickets these days as well? So maybe it was cheaper to go on the helicopter.
Maybe, yeah. But then I think his Liverpool career was, just never really got going. One of my first games at Anfield was actually his probably only good game for Liverpool, which is why I was sort of debating whether to put him in second place or Benteke, because he had Liverpool played Manchester City with Mario Balotelli, and I think Sergio Aguero was already there, and he scored a brace, and that moment made you feel like, oh wow, Liverpool might actually have a good player on their hands, and maybe the tides were turning for him. But then, apart from that brace, he's done nothing at Liverpool, and he didn't really do anything else apart from scoring twice against Manchester City. Very brief, fleeting moments where he gets a header or something like that, but Luis Suarez, who arrived in the same transfer window, completely overshadowed his career, and he was by far the better signing, and that's who they probably should have spent their record transfer on.
Yeah, it was only 9 other goals apart from the 2 that you saw that day, so it was not the best return in Liverpool red, but they as well, he was another player they looked to offload soon enough. 2 years later, sold to West Ham, but they did not, unlike Benteke and unlike some other players that they were able to get lots of money for. Robbie Keane included, that they were able to kind of get close to the asking price or the outlay back. They did not get it back for Andy Carroll. Less than half the price they bought him for, they sold him, so it was not a good investment whatsoever. And 1 in 4 goals we said for Darwin, we said for Benteke, 1 goal in 4 games I should say, and it was 11 goals in 58 games. Is not a good return for the British record signing at the time for your marquee striker. And Luis Suarez kind of put them all to shame. But number 1 on the list is a player who is actually playing for Robbie Keane at the moment, surprisingly not. So we could bring it full circle. How's that for a segue?
Yeah, I knew you were going to mention Robbie Keane again on this podcast. It's Naby Keïta. Probably not a surprise. When he arrived at Liverpool, he was billed as a mixture of Felipe Coutinho and Steven Gerrard, and he got the number 8 shirt. All the Liverpool fans, everyone was saying, we've finally replaced Gerrard. He was going to be that goal-scoring midfielder, which surprised me at the time because he wasn't getting that many goals for Leipzig, not Gerrard levels anyway. But I think the frustrating thing with him was he was a brilliant player when he did play. I really rated him very highly. Problem was, he was hardly available. He'd play 2-3 games and then he'd be out injured for 10. And that was the never-ending cycle for him until he ultimately left Liverpool. And for someone who Liverpool spent so much money on at the time, that is simply not good enough. You want more from such a big transfer fee, and from someone who Liverpool bet pretty much their entire midfield on at the time. They brought him in as this midfielder who was going to evolve the midfield and bring Liverpool the league title, which, in fairness to him, he did deliver on that front, and he obviously played a role in Liverpool's Champions League success as well. But you expected a lot more from what he ultimately gave Liverpool.
Yeah, I personally expected a lot more from what he gave Liverpool. I had watched him obviously a lot at RB Leipzig, tracking his progress closely there, and he dominated their midfield. He was kind of everywhere. He was one of these dynamic, energetic midfielders. He'd bring the ball from one box to the other. He was capable of scoring, assisting. He was winning the ball back. He was just kind of one of these all-round midfielders that if you were a coach and you looked at him, you think this guy is just going to be everything for our team. He can play everywhere. He can do everything. He's obviously not the quickest or the tallest, but he didn't need to be. He was like Kante was for Chelsea that time. He was that sort of a midfielder, and you thought when you arrived at Liverpool that this was kind of the missing piece for Jurgen Klopp, and everything would change after that. Everything did change, but it wasn't thanks to Naby Keïta. It's thanks more to maybe some of the players in the top 5 on our list of the best 5 signings. But before we jump into them, I have to tell our listeners we have a listener survey we'd love you to fill out. The link is going to be in the description. We might put the link in the comments as well on Twitter. It shouldn't take you too long, but it helps us keep the show running. It helps us giving you the content that you want to hear, want to watch on the Transfers Podcast and the Transfers Podcast Extra at the moment. But yeah, hopefully you can take a couple of minutes out of your day, fill that in, and we'd really appreciate it. For now, on to the top 5 Liverpool signings of the 21st century. And number 5 is one that Duncan will probably be impressed by when he listens, because it's a fellow Scotsman. Yeah.
To save people from guessing, it's Andy Robertson, and probably not really any surprises there. He was brought in for £8 million and became one of the best left backs in the world for many, many years. And he solved a left back issue at Liverpool that was ongoing for a long time. Before him, Liverpool really struggled to find a good left back. And then Robertson came in, and he became pretty quickly one of the most influential players in that Liverpool team, and made the Jurgen Klopp system the way it has become known, in the sense that the 2 fullbacks were so influential in creating chances and going forward. And I would say he doesn't get the appreciation that he deserves a lot of the times. When you talk about that great Jurgen Klopp team, people talk about Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, Roberto Firmino, even Trent Alexander-Arnold. But for a long time, Robertson was up there with all of them as one of the most important players. And his ability to stay fit as well, I think, goes under the radar, because he doesn't get many injuries and he's always available.
Yeah, he's played over 300 times for Liverpool since he signed, and what a signing that was at the time, because he was with Hull City, and it's not like they were kind of giants of the world game at the time, especially not that season. £8 million looks one of the biggest bargains that Liverpool have ever made, because Premier League, have a second Premier League this season, FA Cup, 2 League Cups, Champions League, Super Cup, and a Club World Cup. Community Shield as well, but I'm not gonna write too much home about some of them, because some of the players on our worst league might have had a Community Shield or 2 in their back pocket. But yeah, Andy Robertson, what a player, and like you said, I don't think he does get some of the credit he deserves. Maybe he's not as flashy as some of his teammates, but he is super reliable. He's always available, and he has been a godsend for Liverpool at the back, and one of the big reasons why that Klopp era was so successful. Number 4 is a much flashier player who got much more plaudits.
Yeah, exactly. And the 4th was a really difficult one for me because I was debating between Luis Suarez and this man, and in the end, I ended up picking Felipe Coutinho just because Liverpool obviously signed him for a lot less and then sold him for a lot more than Luis Suarez. For me, Coutinho was just one of those players who you kind of don't really hear much about until they get to Liverpool, and he came in and immediately from one of the first few games he was a different level. Like, he just elevated Brendan Rodgers' team from the get-go. Some of the stuff that he did on the pitch were incredible. He was so technically gifted, so skillful, had so much vision on the pitch as well. And in the end, I think some Liverpool fans might sort of remember him with a bad taste in their mouth because of the way he left and the way he had a sort of back injury in the summer and tried to force a move to Barcelona. But to credit him, he stayed, and he probably had his best 6 months at Liverpool in that first half of the season and made Liverpool one of the best attacking sides that season in the 2017-18 season, and ended up moving to Barcelona for a crazy transfer fee that ultimately funded Liverpool signing Virgil van Dijk and Alisson Becker. So in the end, that initial, I think, was it 12.5 or 8.5 million pounds that Liverpool signed him for, ended up funding probably 2 of Liverpool's most important players, so we're going to talk about later on. So for all of those factors, yeah, he comes in at number 4 for me.
Yeah, if you had listened to any of our listeners, listened or watched the Barcelona Transfers podcast extra that we had with Mohamed, but he said that Philippe Coutinho to Barcelona was the worst transfer of all time. Yeah, for any club, anywhere. So obviously it's the best sale of all time then for Liverpool to be able to sell him for 105 million. Initially 105 million before add-ons, but what a return of over 100 million later, and 54 goals in 201 games. And when we were listening out to strikers, 1 in 4 was a bad kind of return for a striker. But Philippe Coutinho was not a striker. He was one of these players who contributed goals, contributed assists, but when you watched him, he would kind of be a difference maker in games. You'd be waiting for him to do something magical. And growing up, kind of that's all any of us wanted from players we watched. Ronaldinho was one of the top players we picked into Barcelona episode as one of the best players, but Philippe Coutinho at his best, he had that magic too. He was capable of changing football matches just by himself. And yeah, any Liverpool fan who kind of watched through that era, and even opposition fans who watched Coutinho through that era will remember just how good he was and how entertaining he could be. And yeah, there's very few players kind of just with the same magic feat that he had. I know the next player on our list is kind of a much more prolific player, perhaps less magic in a way, but more consistent. And sometimes I enjoy the inconsistency a bit more than consistency, because you never know what to expect. But this next guy on the list, you know what to expect every time from him, because he is a winner time and time again, and maybe one of the best players in the world, or the best player in the world this season. And he's not getting any younger.
Yeah, and maybe some Liverpool fans will be surprised that he only comes in at in 3rd place for me. But for me, yeah, it's Mohamed Salah, first of all, I should say. But for me, I think the reason why Salah ranks in 3rd place is primarily just because I think the other 2 have done more to transform Liverpool and have sort of made Liverpool a better team. But that doesn't take anything away from what Salah has done in his Liverpool career. He will go down as one of the best Liverpool players to have ever played for the club. No matter what happens with his current contract situation. Obviously he's having a brilliant season yet again, and his ability and consistency, like you mentioned, makes him one of the best players in the Premier League, and ever since he's arrived in the league, at Liverpool, that is, because he did have a stint in the Premier League before that, but since he's arrived at Liverpool, he has been one of the best players in the league immediately. And I think that is why Liverpool were only able to get him for sort of 38 million pounds initially. At the time, there was a lot of doubts whether he was a Premier League quality player, even though he had done so well at Roma and for Fiorentina before that. But Edwards and his data team believed, and they knew that they could get the best out of him. And I think they had been watching him for a very long time, because I remember when he went to Chelsea and he was at FC Basel, Liverpool were kind of keen to bring him in then, but Chelsea just decided to spend and offer him more money, and in the end he opted for that option. But then in some sort of fortuitous way, he ended up at Liverpool anyway, and maybe it was for the best that he had to sort of wait to get that transfer to Liverpool, and he hasn't looked back since. And for me, he is when you think of Liverpool now in the modern era, you think of Mohamed Salah. So he's the equivalent of like Steven Gerrard, I think, back when I was growing up.
Yeah, if you look at kids growing up and young kids that play football, the Liverpool supporting ones that play football, my 6-year-old, they all have Salah jerseys. That's the player to go for. There's one guy with a Luis Diaz jersey. Fair play to him, he's gone for something different. And there's also a Spurs fan, which is very rare for kids in Ireland these days. But yeah, Salah is everywhere. He's a global brand, and there's no surprise that he is, and there's no surprise that's why Saudi Arabia kind of want to make him the face of their league, the Saudi Pro League, to replace Cristiano Ronaldo there, because he obviously has connection to the Arab world, but he is kind of everybody's player around the world, and people will watch whatever he does next because he just guarantees goals. And that's why I said he's just so consistent and has been so consistent for Liverpool. And 243 goals he has when we record this during the international break in 392 games. And if you went back to the 1 in 4 of the other strikers that we said, he'd have to have played 1,000 games for Liverpool to get that many goals at the rate that the strikers on the worst list are playing. But no, he just contributes so much, and he's contributed so much this season. And yeah, the Christmas tree curse is long gone. The hair transplant has worked wonders. So yeah, this Salah that we're seeing this season, it will be a very sad day when he leaves Anfield, but will happen sooner or later. But for the moment, we have another man who has contract questions over him, and a player who I once said that Liverpool maybe should have signed Lewis Dunk instead, because the amount of money at that time was outrageous. And Liverpool fans like to remind me of this every kind of Christmas season. They like to bring up this tweet that I made that they could have signed Lewis Dunk for 1/10 of the price to do a similar job. I didn't say the exact same now, I'd like to point out. A similar job, but they always ask me, why don't you apologise to Virgil van Dijk for what you said? I've said it many times that I've been wrong, and I don't think Virgil needs my apologies, because he has lots of medals and he's going to get another Premier League medal this season to go with it. So I think he's doing okay. And yeah, Virgil van Dijk is number 2, not Lewis Dunk. This list could have been very different, but not Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, maybe we've redeemed ourselves, so I have anyway, by picking him in second spot. And I think the reason why is the big transfer fee. So 75 million at the time, it was pretty much unheard of to pay that much for a centre-back. And that is one of the factors why he comes in second place for me, because it was a very risky move for Liverpool. It's a very risky transfer to make. You pretty much have to be like 100% certain that this is going to work out. Otherwise, it would have been a terrible piece of business from Liverpool. But in the end, Van Dijk sort of proved that, yeah, he is very much worth that, if not more. And I think the pressure that comes with that fee as well, the way he came in, I don't think there are very few players who can deal with that sort of pressure and that sort of weight on their shoulders when you come in and a club has spent 75 million on you. I mean, maybe not these days, because clubs tend to spend 75 million on any player really, but back in those days, 7 years ago, not that long ago, but back in those days, it was quite unheard of to spend that much on a player. And he comes in second place for that reason. But I think for me, the other factor is when he came in, he completely transformed Liverpool. So before, I mentioned with Coutinho, Liverpool were a great attacking team, but defensively there were issues. I mean, the season he came in, I remember a game against Tottenham when I think Tottenham won 4-1 at Wembley, when they were still playing at Wembley, and Liverpool were completely destroyed. Dejan Lovren was at the back, who I think later that season when he was playing in the World Cup ended up saying he was one of the best defenders in the world. But the reason why he believed that, and he had a claim for that, is because he played alongside Virgil van Dijk for the second part of the season, and Van Dijk made him so much better. His actual quality, if you look at it, when you watch the Spurs game back when Van Dijk wasn't on the pitch, was a lot worse. So for those factors, Van Dijk comes in second place for me because of how much he improved the squad, how much he made Liverpool better, and how much he made Liverpool into the team that they ultimately became under Jurgen Klopp, which is one of the best teams in the world.
Yeah, and you see some of the players that he plays beside obviously Dejan Lovren, but some of the other defenders that he's played alongside, he makes them better. He makes the players around him better. And you see when they leave Liverpool, they're just not as good. There's no player that you can say that's left the Liverpool defence and gone on to better things or has improved. They might have left for a lesser team, but they've improved their performances. They haven't. It just doesn't happen. He makes players around him better, and he is obviously a colossus in defence, and maybe that's even true at international level. He makes the international defenders. There's a Manchester United centre-back that probably looks better in his international team because he's playing alongside Virgil van Dijk than he does alongside Harry Maguire, perhaps. But yeah, I think we had enough Man United slating last week on the pod with Duncan and Philippe, so I might skip off the Man United slating this week, and we might go a bit easier. But it wouldn't be a Liverpool themed episode without some negativity about Manchester United. You have to get that in there. But your number one is perhaps somewhat surprising. It might surprise someone that Virgil van Dijk wasn't number one, Mo Salah wasn't number one, but it's not. It's the man that has all the exact same trophies as Virgil van Dijk, except one. Van Dijk has the Premier League, the FA Cup, the League Cup twice, Champions League, Super Cup, Club World Cup. But this man does not have the Club World Cup because there was a different man in his position and a different man on the bench. Andy Lonergan took that Club World, won the Super Cup medal that he doesn't have. So who is our number one?
I thought you were going to mention Kevin Kelleher somehow, but no, it's a different goalkeeper. Yeah, I mean, it's Alisson. I think people will have figured it out by now. And for me, the reason this man comes in at number one is because growing up, I spent a decade watching some of the worst goalkeepers I think to have ever played for Liverpool. Pepe Reina was perhaps the best of a bad bunch, but even he had some crazy moments in a Liverpool shirt, and you never really trusted anyone who was playing in goal for Liverpool during my sort of years watching the club. Then obviously you had Simon Mignolet, again, not a very good goalkeeper. Loris Karius, I mean, the less said about him, the better. And for many years, it just felt like Liverpool goalkeepers were cursed at Liverpool. Like, we were just never going to get a good one. And then Liverpool decided to spend, I think, a record fee at the time, which was quickly broken by Chelsea signing Kepa. And I think that sort of highlights how good of a business Liverpool did in contrast to Chelsea, because Liverpool brought Alisson in, and we saw his quality when he played for Roma, and we saw how good he was. But, you know, even then, I think question marks were raised about, is he worth that amount? Is he the best goalkeeper in the world? And he very quickly proved that he was. And some of the performances that he has delivered. He's won games single-handedly for Liverpool. I think most recently we've probably produced the best Champions League performance we've ever seen a goalkeeper produce against Paris Saint-Germain in Paris. I mean, in the end, Liverpool didn't quite go through and didn't get the result that they wanted, but that take nothing away from that moment. I think that moment will be remembered for a long time. It might have been remembered more if Liverpool actually won the tie, but that's another story. And it's not a rare occurrence either. I mean, Alisson has had those moments time and time again at Liverpool. And for me, that's why he is the best piece of business that Liverpool have done, because we saw in the 2018 Champions League final, you can have the best defender in the world. You can have a brilliant Mo Salah, a brilliant attack in Sadio Mane and Roberto Firmino, and a great midfield. But you need a good goalkeeper to actually win something. And it wasn't until Alisson had arrived that Liverpool actually started to win trophies. And yeah, for me, he's the one who transformed Liverpool the most in Jurgen Klopp's era, and that's why he gets the number one spot.
Yeah, it kind of turned him from runners up to winners. He was the missing link there. That everyone remembers the glorious Carrius final. But yeah, he was the missing link, and he's been so reliable, so dependable, and he's obviously so good that he kept Caoimhin Kelleher out of the team, who, when he stepped in, has obviously been brilliant. I'm extremely biased. I think Liverpool are cowards for not starting Caoimhin Kelleher every week, as you might see on my Twitter account. But yeah, it's hard to drop Alisson when he is the best goalkeeper in the world, one of the best goalkeepers in Liverpool history, one of the best goalkeepers in Premier League history, and by the end of the season, he'll be up to over 300 games for Liverpool. He has 1 goal, so that means he just 9 goals shy of Andy Carroll, and 10 goals shy of Andy Carroll, and 9 goals shy of Christian Benteke as returns for Liverpool. So maybe if he had been played up front, he could have even got more, because yeah, what memorable moments he's produced at both ends of the pitch for Liverpool, and a worthy number one. And I know people might have been surprised by the fact that he's ahead of Van Dijk, ahead of Salah, but I can't disagree with you. I think he is the reason that Liverpool are winners instead of runners-up.
Yeah, I think so. And he got a few assists as well. We need to add, I think, that as well. So maybe when it comes to overall goal contributions, he might even be closer to Carroll and Benteke.
Yeah. We've seen from his footwork that he probably would be good enough to play outfield at times. So, yeah. So what a great list, and thank you for bringing that to us. And I know Duncan likes, before we end the show, to have a hero and villain of the week. So it's international break. We've just seen the Carabao Cup final. So who is your hero this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be Dan Burn. He's got an England call up, won the Carabao Cup, scored in the Carabao Cup final, and you can see he's definitely milking the moment, watching his goal while being called up on England duty. I think it was after training. He was sort of spotted just looking back that goal next to Jordan Henderson, ironically, who was sort of laughing along, even though that was against his former side. So bit of a bizarre moment, but Henderson has had a few bizarre moments like that since he left Liverpool. But for me, yeah, it's got to be Dan Burn. He's had a brilliant week. I don't think he'll ever have a better week in his entire life than this one. Getting that England call up, I think it was on Thursday that he found out, and then he scored the well, it wasn't the winning goal, but the first goal, which gave Newcastle a massive boost in that final, and the confidence to go on and win the game.
Yeah, well, what a week he's had, and he kind of an inspiration for us older guys that maybe there's a chance of an international call-up in our future. Never give up hope. Never give up hope. That's the lesson that I'm here. The villain for me, I'm going for an international team going too. I'm going for Lee Carsley as my villain of the week. The England under-21 manager, former Ireland international, former England manager, but this week for the England under-21 squad, he has called up Dennis Surkin, the Sutherland left back, born in Dublin, obviously an England underage international. under 18, under 20 level before, but this is his first England under 21 call up. He is 22. He's going to be 23 next month, so he's not going to be around England under 21s for too long. He's playing for Sunderland, so he's not probably going to be an England international in the future, but he could be an Ireland international right now. We have no left backs. Please, Lee Carsley, give us a left back. This guy is actually born in Dublin, and you're taking him from us. We don't mind Jack Grealish. We don't mind Declan Rice. That's in the past. They're born in England. You can have them. But this guy, we don't have a left back. We haven't had one for years. We've been playing Kevin Kilban at left back. Robbie Brady's been converted from a winger into left back too. James McLean got over 100 caps for Ireland. He's another converted winger into a left back. We need a left back. Please, Lee, all I'm asking you is to give us the left back. You won't be my villain anymore. You'll be my hero. Please, I'd love it, Lee. And what a way to finish off. So also, if you can please spare some time to fill in our listener survey in the comments, that would be great. It's in the description. The link is in the description or in the comments on social media. If you could give Bence Bence's book a read, if you have a look for that. It's The Rise of the Underdog. It's worth checking out. You can also follow his videos with ample watch on YouTube, similar to where you find this video episode. So thanks very much, Bence, for your time today and picking your top 5 and bottom 5 Liverpool transfers of the 21st century.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. And I look forward to the comments disagreeing with me under this video.
That is what I live for. So bring them on, please. After you've finished the listener survey, of course. You've been listening to the Transfers podcast powered by FootballTransfers.com. If you liked what you heard, please follow, share and rate us. Your support helps us bring you more news, analysis and insight. You can message us on Instagram, YouTube and Facebook at Transfers Podcast. Our Twitter and Blue Sky address is at Transfers Podcast. I'm on Twitter at Swerma Paul and Blue Sky at Ronan Murphy. Bence is on Twitter at Bence Bocsak, and I think the same on Blue Sky. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's right. Our production is by Mark Caulfield at Pro Podcast Production, and our music is by Mark Caulfield and David L. Stay safe, be well, and thank you for listening.
He did the transfer window. Ian McGarry, who left us and wasn't known for a couple of years. Duncan was low. Now he's back with a new show. It's called The Transfers. It's where everyone's gonna go. The Transfers. Gotta go. Where everyone's gonna go. Where everyone's gonna go. Where everyone's gonna go. Where everyone's gonna go.